Once again, welcome to Consulting Growth Hour. This is our 63rd session, believe it or not, and I'm very happy to host all of you here. And as you can see, today's session is about clarifying your value and winning more consulting clients. Right, so I know some of you have been to these sessions before, but I can see some new faces as well. So I'll give you a very brief introduction of who I am and why you should listen to me. My name is Fahim Musa. I am the founder of Springboarders, a strategic planning firm, consulting firm that I founded back in 2009 here in Toronto, Canada. And during the course of running my consulting company, I have sold over 200 consulting engagements all across the board, not just small businesses, but mid-sized companies, large companies, some Fortune 500 companies, one Fortune 100 company, nonprofits, and also a few government agencies. So I've taken all that experience, that sales and marketing experience, and use it now to help consultants like you and both independent consultants and owners of boutique firms to build a sales pipeline and grow their practice and build a thriving business. Right. So today, it's going to be a little technical. So I know some of you folks may not like to get too technical, but I like to get in the weeds, and I'm going to share some examples. One big example today, and we're going to be talking about value, how to create value, how to clarify value for your clients. My biggest market segment, some of you may know this, and I've spoken about this at length in my previous sessions, but I'm going to be going a little deeper today and show you how I clarified and communicated value for my biggest market segment. My biggest market segment was the academia segment. I did serve a wide range of companies. My firm did serve various types of industries and segments, but we found our biggest opportunity in the university segment, where we served large universities and we helped them we help academics within universities launch their products and inventions. All of these academics in universities, most of them had lots of ideas, and we went in and helped them either turn those ideas into business startups or license their technology to larger companies. And we just out of luck, we fell into that market, and we ended up building most of our business in that market. And the premise for today is value is determined by the buyer. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. And I'll give you a little bit of background as we move forward as to what the issues were in my target market and how we created an offering that resonated with that market, and hopefully you'll be able to apply the same principles for your business as well. What I like to do at the beginning of every session is have you folks type in the chat, let me know what type of consulting you do, and then if you have any questions on anything that you see today or hear today, just type it in the chat. I'll take questions in the end. Okay. So who is this session for? It's for business-to-business consultants, no surprise there. Whether you're a strategy consultant, IT, operations, communications, digital transformation, marketing, sales, as long as you're selling to businesses and organizations and you're helping them improve in some way, shape, or form, and you've started your business sometime in the last 5 years or so, then you'll find all these concepts valuable. What happened there? So if you're facing some of these problems, and I know that a lot of businesses face these problems, but especially in the early stages of your business, these problems are pretty common. Number one, you struggle to attract clients consistently. Prospects don't see a very specific and compelling reason to choose you over the others, because they see the market as a sea of sameness. You keep hearing, we already have someone to do this. So the way you're positioned in the marketplace doesn't help you differentiate and stand out and help and have people sit up and take notice of you. It's hard to explain what you do. This is very, very difficult for consultants because most of us have got decades of experience, and it's so hard to pinpoint exactly what you do, which causes confusion when you have a conversation or when you're out marketing your services to a large group of people. When you have a one-on-one conversation, typically it becomes easier because you know who you're sitting in front of, and you can talk to those problems and that category. But when you want to create some kind of a marketing campaign, it's really hard to explain what you do. This one's going to resonate with a lot of you. Prospects ghost you often. Getting ghosted is normal. I think every salesperson worth their salt gets ghosted, especially now because everything is remote. I mean, most things are remote, and you can just simply choose to ignore an email or a message. So ghosting is normal, but you get ghosted very often. So they don't see you. They don't see a compelling, urgent reason to work with you. Clients ask you for a lot of custom work. Customization is fine. I'm not against customization because a lot of consulting is customized, but as a result of you agreeing to customize every engagement, you don't end up having a specialty, and you end up getting 5 different projects or 3 different projects for 3 different types of clients, and you say you'll do everything, just because you want the money. It's okay in the early days, but when you want to grow your business, that becomes a liability. Long sales cycles. Prospects take long to say yes to you, again, because they don't see the urgency in hiring you, right? I mean, if it's okay if they're working on other priorities, more urgent priorities, but if they have a problem that you can fix, they simply don't see the urgency, and they just keep putting it off and putting it off, right? If you come across that often, then you have a major problem. All of these things that I mentioned, if you have them once in a while, if you experience them once in a while, that's okay. Everybody goes through that. But if it happens too often, then you've got clearly a value problem and a communication problem. So how do you clarify your value and win more consulting clients? Now, if you've come to these sessions before, and I do them every 2 weeks, the Consulting Growth Hour series, I talk a lot about this topic of value. I've done sessions on value proposition, how to create repeatable, valuable offers, how to create, how to do service design, consulting service design. And all of those topics have value in them, the concept of value. Today, I want to take a slightly different angle. I've also created presentations on how to create an offering that is irresistible and compelling and so on. But today I want to take an angle that I feel is super important, and I haven't talked much about it before. This is about the concept of being bold and offering something that is outcome-based and is focused on your client's transformation objectively, so that you are highly differentiated in the marketplace. And not a lot of people can offer what you offer. Not a lot of people can communicate to your prospects the type of value that you can bring to the table, right? And that kind of sets you apart. So that's when your offering is focused on outcomes, clear outcomes, and you can deliver on those outcomes, and you have social proof that you have delivered on those outcomes, it makes your business a very strong business, right? It makes it a very defensible business, where if you're up against 2 or 3 other consultants and you're able to go in and say, here are the specific outcomes, I've done this before, I know what I'm talking about, and I can do this for you, and here's why. It makes your entire proposition very, very compelling, right? Most consultants don't have this. They don't do this. And I'm going to call this the bold edition, because it's going to require you to be a little bit bold and put yourself out there and talk about outcomes rather than simple, services, right? I always tell my clients that we're not, as consultants, we're not service providers, we're outcome providers, because clients don't buy services, they buy outcomes. So we're going to talk a lot of concepts today. You may want to have, you may want to review this session. So if you want to replay of the session, just go to Consulting Growth Hub. I've dropped a link in the chat. This is a free community for business consultants such as yourselves, and you'll find all the replays of all the past sessions. You'll also find other consultants you can network with, but no selling to them. It's just a networking platform. And you'll also find other resources time and time again. When I create content, if there's something useful, I'll post it on there. And the intent is to help you build a thriving consulting business. So go ahead and use that link, or just look at the chat, and I've posted a link over there. Okay. So let's talk about part 1, the foundation of value for consultants. Again, this may look slightly familiar for those of you who've been attending these sessions, but again, I like repeating stuff, because repetition is good when you're learning something new. And as adults, we need a lot of repetition, because the first time you may not think of it a certain way. The second time you look at it, something will click, and the third time you'll get a major aha or breakthrough. So again, if you've seen these concepts before, just have an open mind and let's go through them again. So the foundation of value, right? In any business, the foundation of value is pure demand and supply. If you have a product or service that is scarce, and you go sell it in a market that has high demand, and high scarcity, then you're going to have a shot at selling that product or service. And if you're selling high ticket services, the more urgent, more costly those problems are for which there's demand, then there is a high chance that you'll be able to you'll be able to make sales. And as long as that market is a viable market with lots of people, you can build a business, a profitable business. So everything starts with demand and supply. I mean, I can give you all types of concepts and frameworks, and as consultants, we love to do this, right? Create a lot of frameworks and methodologies and so on. But at the end of the day, if you sell in a market with no demand, then none of this is going to work, right? So that's the foundation of just the basics of value creation. Now, what most consultants do is that they'll offer a lot of things. They'll offer strategy, execution, they'll do coaching, they'll do advisory, they'll do training across multiple types of clients and multiple types of industries and businesses. And in the end, they'll just, become forgettable, right? Because clients are not, prospects are, see them as the same as the next person, right? And that's what you do there is you enter a market and you're not scarce. You're not offering a scarce a thing of value anymore, and it doesn't work for you. Unless you have real scale, it's going to be very hard to compete in these large, big, established markets where, you say you can do everything. A lot of consultants, including me, started off this way. I'll do everything. It's okay to get a couple of clients that way, but it's really hard to scale and grow if you're going to say, I do everything. I'll do a bit of strategy, I'll implement for you, I'll coach you, I'll coach your teams, I'll do some training, etc. And depending on it doesn't matter which type of business you are. You're a small business, you're a solopreneur, you're a Fortune 500 company. I'll do it all, right? That's the surefire. That's a surefire way to kill any demand in those markets, because you become almost invisible, right? So if you started a business very recently in the last 5 years, without knowing anything about your business, I know that you need to specialize. It's okay to be a little broad in the beginning. It's fine. But once you have an inkling of which types of clients are, or which types of organizations are receptive to your offer, and your offer resonates with those folks, you've got to double down and specialize, and go into markets with an offering that is scarce, where there is latent demand for that kind of specialty. Let's look at some examples, right? Again, like, it's all about demand and supply. What you want to do is to create an offering based on the demand, based on the demand in that specific narrow market. Create an offering that is scarce, so that you'll be able to go in and have a very compelling value proposition. Let's look at some examples. I like learning through examples, and a lot of these concepts can be very heavy. These examples too are specific examples, so if it doesn't pertain to you, just bear with me and look for the concepts here, right? When you want to create an offering, anything, whether it's a product or a service, and especially, let's stick to services, forget products for now. When you want to create and sell a consulting service, there are three things that you want to look at. Number one is obviously your expertise. You're an expert, right? You want to focus on a specific expertise that you have that you're really good at. You want to then match that expertise with markets that you know really well, that you've worked with in the past, because in business to business, people are going to ask you, have you worked with the type of organization that we are? Have you worked with clients in our industry? For a lot of the times it doesn't matter, but for buyers it matters, right? If that's how they buy, we want to have a very compelling reason as to why they should work with us. So in order to specialize, you want to choose markets that you know intimately well, because you'll be able to speak that language, right? And only when you're able to speak that language will you build trust in front of buyers. And finally, any business is based on unmet needs, right? You're going in and filling in an unmet need. So you have expertise, you have markets you know, and you have unmet needs. A lot of consultants will go in and they'll say, I can do everything for every market, and I'll solve any problem broadly, right? So, and that's just simply a recipe for disaster. So if you're a strategy consultant, you want to really narrow down. For example, you can build growth and competitive strategy. That's your expertise. You match that with a market that you know, which is, let's say, biotech. And then you cater to an unmet need, which is organic growth is difficult for the complex pharma and healthcare industries. And you'll help do that. You'll help, with some M&A, mergers and acquisitions, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, you get the gist of where I'm going. You want to really focus in on your expertise, markets you know, and unmet needs. I've covered this at length in my earlier sessions. So just check out the community and look at any session on value and offer development. If you're an IT consultant, you could focus on a specialty like Oracle, for example. Choose markets that mid-sized financial firms, again, example. And then what are the unmet needs? Oracle has mandated its customers to move to the cloud, for example, and financial firms risk data loss and regulatory penalties, et cetera, et cetera. You can go and fix all that stuff. I mean, if you're not an IT consultant, this is going to be Greek and Latin to you, ignore it, but just focus on the concept of expertise, markets you know, and unmet needs. because even before you clarify your value, you need to have the right foundation. If you're a market research consultant, focus on your expertise. It could be consumer behavior insights on social channels for large CPG consumer product goods brands, like any of your brands that you use at home, and then focus on an unmet need where brands can't understand Gen Zs, for example, and that's your focus, and that you create an offering around that, right? If you have not created or selected a specialty, it's going to be really hard for you to sell, for the reasons I mentioned earlier. And look, a lot of times I hear that consultants want to hedge their bets and serve everyone because you don't know where your next client is going to come from. I understand where that mentality comes from because I've been there. But I also want to say that, you don't have to go after a huge market. You can go after a very small market. As long as there are, organizations that you can go and market to, and you get a handful of clients. You don't need a large mass market. You don't need a mass volume of clients to make a consulting business work. At best, you need a handful of clients, 4 clients, 5 clients, up to 10. That does not mean that you don't need a mass market for that. So don't be afraid to niche down. You can reach almost anyone in today's market on using various channels. So it's okay to niche down. The more you specialize, the easier it's going to be to sell. The easier it's going to be to clarify your value. So that is a foundation. That's the foundation of value, where if you don't have a good idea of what you're best at, which is your expertise, markets you know really well, and unmet needs, everything I'm going to say from now on is not going to help you. Okay. And if you want more detail on this concept, like I said, just check out the replay in the community. Replays. There are multiple times I've gone into these concepts. Right. All right. I hope everyone's awake. I know that I tend to go deep into concepts. I like to do that because I feel that a lot of our webinars, they'll just kind of address a topic at the surface level, and you don't learn much. But I want you folks to keep coming back every couple of weeks, and do a deep dive with me on these concepts. Even if there's a little repetition, it's okay, because as adults, a concept of a key feature in adult learning is that you need repetition, because that's how we learn. You want to keep hearing about various concepts again, over and over again, and then you'll get some kind of breakthrough or an aha moment based on your business, and you kind of take concepts that you learn and apply it to your business. So that's the idea behind the series, Consulting Growth Hour. So I'll be very happy if you keep coming back and learning these concepts with the rest of the participants. Okay, so now we go to part 2, which is communicating value. How do you communicate value? It's one of the most hardest things for consultants, because we get into consultants get into this profession because of decades of experience. Because you don't have that, then you won't be an expert. You'll just be a novice, right? You'll try and portray yourself as an expert. But when you have decades of experience in something, it's hard to kind of boil that down into a sentence or two and say, this is what you do and this is how you create value. So it becomes super hard for technical folks like consultants. And I struggle with this, but now I'm much more clearer, and I hope that some of these concepts will be able to help all of you. So communicating value. The biggest communication mistake consultants make is what I call egocentric messaging. It's all about me, right? You talk about what you do, and what you do, and what you provide. So you say things like, when I say you, it's not you, the person who's listening, I'm just saying in general, right? Consultants will say, I am XYZ. I do this. I provide these services. I own a consultancy that has, these 3 or 4 services or whatnot. So it's all about what you offer, what you provide, without, not in the context of what your prospects or your market is going through. I'll give you some examples, and these are some real examples that I've taken from LinkedIn profiles and websites. So this is the kind of messaging that you'll see very often. Like X consulting company is your one-stop shop for transportation and transportation management services. We know how to important seamless transformation is. Transformation is blah, 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 blah. It's all about, some jargon that the consultant has come up with and about, what they do. But it does not talk at length about the prospect and who the reader is and what's important to them. Here's another one. X consulting company provides management consulting services to companies based out of this location. We're the best consulting companies in this field. We provide management consulting services, innovation strategy, problem solving, business transformation, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of strategy consultants are positioned this way, and they talk about themselves this way. Like if that's what your message is to the market, it just sounds like everybody else. How are you going to differentiate? What are you going to, how are you going to have prospects just simply stop what they're doing, read what you're saying, and say, this is exactly for me. I need this. You're not going to get that kind of reaction with this type of messaging. This is another one. Seasoned procurement and supply chain, hands-on consultant with demonstrated ability to deliver mission-critical results and alignment. I mean, it's Greek and Latin. Yes, a procurement consultant would understand what it means, but for someone in, a buying industry, a prospect, they're just numb to these kinds of messages. Like it's just they don't want to read it, right? So if this is not the right way to communicate your value, then what is? So here's the truth, is that clients don't care about your services, your experience, your qualifications. No one cares. They only care about their transformation and outcomes. As I said earlier, clients buy outcomes. They don't buy services. They want some kind of a change, right? When they buy from you, they're buying change. They want something different. They want to be at a different place from where they are right now because they feel some kind of pain. So what are business outcomes? Before I get into business outcomes, I just want to say that, communicating and communication in general is about pain. You want to articulate the pain that your prospects are going through. When you articulate their situation and really get their situation, you're going to attract them to your world because people want to feel understood. People want to feel that the person in front of them hears them. It's a basic human need, and understands them and gets them, right? So, and again, I've spoken about this concept a lot, about communication in terms of understanding and articulating pain and what your prospect is going through, and so on, right? It's all there in the replays, but what I want to focus on today is about outcomes, because as I mentioned earlier, this today's session is about being bold and talking about what you can do for your clients in terms of an outcome and a transformation, right? So what are business outcomes? It's very, very simple. I mean, all of you will know what these are. A business outcome it could be about revenue growth, predictable revenue growth. It could be about, wanting more customers, increased share of wallet. It could be increasing your profitability, reducing your costs, right? All of these outcomes are quantifiable, right? Some of them, if some type of consulting, it's easy to quantify and say that, you know, you'll be able to get these results. But a lot of other types of consulting, it may not be that simple. Like, for example, leadership consulting, culture consulting, brand consulting. That's what you think. It may not be quantifiable, but my belief is that any type of business consulting you do, you'll be able to quantify results, and you have to. And that's the theme for today about being bold. I would like you to think a little bit about how you can create real business outcomes for your clients, because that's how you will clarify the value that you provide, and you'll have them see you for what you truly are and what your worth is. So the key is, there's one thing you can take away from today, is think about how you can quantify outcomes that are important for your market. And we'll learn about this through an example. I like to learn through examples. And I was telling you a little earlier that my main market in my strategic planning consulting firm was universities, academic researchers who kept coming up with new inventions and scientific ideas and wanted to create a business out of those ideas. Did not have any financial and marketing knowledge to launch those companies. And universities, especially the forward-looking ones, had commercialization departments within the universities that would help these academics to launch their businesses or license their technology to larger companies. And I worked with these research commercialization departments, and they would feed me various academics who had business ideas. And initially, I just didn't understand them. I just felt that, I would go in and offer strategic planning services because that's what my expertise was, and go-to-market strategy, which is, again, what I did. I would help them, turn the ideas into a business. So when I did that, I did not get any traction with them, right? Because strategic planning, like, that's just sounds boring. What does that even mean? I couldn't explain it in a way that was compelling. But then I learned a lot about their problems, and I learned about communication and how to kind of get their attention. And yes, I started asking them a lot of questions. Now, it was a very peculiar situation for these folks. It was very specific, where these academics were super busy in their day jobs because they were teaching, right? Very senior professors. They had business ideas, right? During their research, they came up with ideas. To launch those business ideas, they would need money. So they would write up a small 2-pager on the business idea, and they would collect grants, some, government grant or a private foundation grant. They would collect grants, but those grants would have a time limit. If you don't spend the money by X month, or, by this date, then, we'll take it back. You lose the money, you lose the grant. So there was a deadline. And these folks are super busy. They were getting help currently from business students at the university. The business students used to come in and help them with some marketing planning and financial planning or whatnot. And that wasn't working out because business students were doing it part-time as well, right? And so there was a lot of frustration there. They needed help. The university did not have full-time resources dedicated to helping them. And the clock was ticking because they would lose money. They would lose the grant. right? So this was the situation. And, the reason they wanted to build a business was because they wanted to create wealth. They were nearing retirement. They felt that if they had a unique business idea that would help a lot of people, they could profit from it. And it was their retirement plan. So there was a strong motivation to launch and sell the business or exit or whatever, right? So I understood all of this stuff and realized that what these folks wanted was to simply launch their businesses. Once they launched their businesses, they've created something of value, and then they could kind of grow it from there. The key problem was not, they didn't want a big strategic plan that I provided, which is what my specialty was. They wanted to launch their businesses. That was the key issue, right? So as a strategy consultant, it was really hard for me to create an outcome-based offering initially, because when I thought of strategy, I felt that, how can you create something, how can you show that you're creating an outcome? Because the result of a strategy or a plan comes much later in the long term, where you'll see increased revenues, where you'll see some kind of competitive edge, or you'll see a higher profitability. So it was hard for me to kind of promise all of that, because that came later, right? But I had to focus on what I could create and how I could quantify results in the short term. So that was the dilemma. I imagine a lot of consultants in the room today also, and those listening on the podcast, have services that you feel you cannot immediately quantify because they are take place in the long term. Results come in the long term. But I want to challenge you and have you think about specific outcomes that you can create in the short term, because no matter what type of consulting you do, there are specific outcomes that you can think about that you create in the short term. And I'll give you examples based on my business, now that you understand what a problem I was solving. So initially, my offer was this: I provide business planning and go-to-market strategy for academic researchers. That just flew over people's heads. Nobody knew what I was talking about. But when I understood their problem and changed my messaging, it became this. It was called 90 Days to Launch, helping busy inventors at universities go to market in 90 days using lean business planning. So my promise was, in 90 days, I'll help launch your business. Okay, that became much more compelling. It was really such a simple thing, but in my head, I couldn't come up with it because I was lost in all the technical stuff that I did. So helping busy inventors at universities go to market in 90 days using lean business planning. Now, the idea of having a business in 90 days was super compelling. And that's when I started having more serious conversations with academics, because part of the funding came from them, part of the funding came from the grants that they raised, and part of the funding came from the university. So there were 3 different funding sources, and academics had to put some money on the table as well. So if I didn't have a compelling value proposition, they wouldn't go with me. So I had to have one. So this was my overall value. And I didn't stop there. And this is something I've never shared in these sessions before. What we did later, as a next step, was we focused on what is known as leading indicators. We're getting a little technical here. I know I just looked at the clock. It was just like 10, 12 minutes over, but just bear with me. Leading indicators are what you can do short term, what you can offer short term. And so what we offered was, a validated problem solution fit. I mean, if this is technical for you, just don't get into, don't let this confuse you. What I'd like you to focus on is think of your business and think of what you can offer in the short term that you can quantify. So a problem solution fit is something that we could quantify based on how many customers we interviewed for them, business model clarity, progress on a minimum viable product, early market interest in terms of, metrics with test customers, and then how ready they were for, getting an investor grant or funding, right? So don't look at the technicalities, but think of your business and think about what you can do in the short term that you can quantify, right? Those are leading indicators. And then after the 3 months, we would go back to them and we would do lagging indicators. Lagging indicators are what you can measure in mid to long term, right? Lagging indicators are you're measuring past successes. So this would mean funding raised. How much funding they raised, because we would help them raise funding as well, but that happened, in the long term, mid to long term. Revenue generated, right? Revenue generated is a lagging indicator as well, right? Like how much money did the startup bring in terms of revenue? We couldn't quantify that in the short term, but initially I was thinking that as a strategic planner, outcomes are created only in the long term, and revenue is one of the outcomes. And I was confused as to how am I gonna, create an outcome focused value proposition if my outcomes come way into the future, right? So that's when we created leading short-term indicators and lagging long-term indicators, right? Customer acquisition, how many customers did you acquire, paying customers and partnerships? And then, a minimum viable product iterations and improvements, and validation, like media coverage, invitations to, specific accelerators. We used to help with all of this stuff, but we used to measure them in these two ways, short-term and long-term. So when we presented this to our customers, they got very excited because they knew that in 90 days, we're going to do something for them. They're going to have a launch. They're going to launch their businesses. And we defined what that launch meant very clearly with those leading indicators that I showed you in the previous page. And it was easy for them to make a decision. We never had to convince them, right? People think that sales is an act of persuasion and convincing. We didn't have to do that. Like the value was clear here to them because they knew we understood what they wanted. They knew we understood their pain, and we created a very hands-off model. This was what you call a done for you business model, where we would go in and do things for them, and they would be almost hands-off. Not almost, but they would have a few hours every week that they had certain things to do. I'll come to that. But they didn't have to do a lot of this stuff. They didn't have to go and engage with customers. They didn't have to put together a big action plan or a roadmap. They didn't have to do, a lot of the secondary research. We would do it for them, right? But the value that they were getting was they were getting a business in 90 days, and they could see that if they have a business, they created something of value for themselves. They have a chance of growing that business, selling that business in the future. But right now they had nothing, right? They didn't have a business. They simply had an idea. So when we presented it this way, leading and lagging indicators and outcomes, we got a lot of traction and we got a lot of business. So that's when our business started to grow, right? So initially, when we thought of this, me and a couple of other associates, when we created this offering, we were a little concerned because, there was risk involved, right? Like, what if we're not able to deliver on these metrics, right? Like, what if we don't create that plan within 90 days? What if we don't have a minimum viable product, which we say we're going to help them create? What if we don't find any potential customers to interview, right? And we don't have any grant applications. So these were slightly concerning because we were promising these things. And then the lagging indicators, like if we're going to promise, a certain amount of grant funding or getting letters of intent from potential customers or partners or accelerators or and so on, or getting another larger company to get a distribution deal or so on. Those were things we were promising. And we were a little nervous about, okay, if we promise all this stuff, what happens if we don't do it? And part of our fees were contingent on performance, right? So it was a bit risky. But then we realized that we've got to keep things extremely clear. And we created a whole bunch of detailed assumptions and expectations that we wanted the client to perform on their end, right? This is how we mitigated our risk, right? Like when you base your entire value proposition on specific outcome, business outcomes, you're naturally going to think of, okay, what if I don't deliver? What happens? So you have a set, you've got to think of specific assumptions and client expectations that you put forth. So we would tell our clients that, look, there is a commitment and time investment in this. You can't be fully hands-off. You'll be mostly hands-off, but we need at least 5 hours per week because we need an input from you. You need to attend your strategy sessions that we put together for you. You need to be proactive in giving us data, because when we ask for reports or a previous plan or something to do with the product in order for us to do our research, you need to give that to us in 2 business days. Otherwise, the 90-day thing is not going to work. In terms of market research and validation, you need to be present for client discovery, customer discovery. If we gather potential customers for your product or your invention, you got to be there. And if you're not, then it's just simply not going to work. And you got to understand that not all of your ideas may be validated. Sometimes you need pivots as well. So we put all of this down on the table before starting an engagement. So there was understanding between us, the consultants, and the client, right? Every consulting engagement is a collaboration. It's not like a consultant or a firm can go in and do everything without having any involvement from the client. Clients need to be involved because they provide the input. So if it's a collaboration, we made it very clear what our role was, what the client's role was, and if these conditions were met, we were very confident of creating these outcomes. You see? So, and that's the other thing, the underlying thing over here, being bold and creating these a bold value proposition, is that you need to have confidence in what you do. Because if you don't, then how are you going to deliver on those outcomes, right? So that's one of the key things. Like you want to be able to ensure that you deliver. And if you've got expertise to deliver and create a meaningful transformation or an outcome for your client, then you'll be an exceptional consultant. You'll be an exceptional expert because you create outcomes, you create change for your client. So some of you may be thinking that, yes, you have an outcome, a clear outcome that you can offer. And yes, you have assumptions. Now, these assumptions are risk mitigation. It's a risk mitigation strategy where, if things don't work out, you can always fall back on the assumptions and say, you know what, it didn't work because the client didn't work, or you didn't do this, you didn't do that. So you will be protected in some way, right? If the outcome is not created. But here's how we used to work. We used to be relentless in ensuring that our clients really collaborated, because these folks were busy. A lot of the times, for some engagements, these folks would simply, quit midway because it was too much of a commitment. They wouldn't realize that they needed to be committed. And it was really frustrating for us because if they didn't perform, then we would lose part of our fees. So our job was to ensure that these clients actually did the work and gave us the right information at the right time, showed up at customer discovery interviews, actually created my minimum viable product based on our inputs, and they showed up. So we were relentless in ensuring that they they were there and they kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? They matched their end of the bargain because it affected the results of the engagement. And we wanted results. We wanted real results because we knew that once our clients got outcomes, real outcomes, once they launched their companies or they licensed their technology to a larger company, other academics, other customers would come to us, other universities would come to us, and we would get to work with them, right? So results were important not just for our fees, but for our reputation as well, right? And that's where the boldness comes in, because you need to be able to have confidence in yourself to say that we're going to get you a business outcome that's important to you, and we're going to put our money where our mouth is. If you do these two things and you get the result, then you've got a business that is so defensible that, regular competitors will not be able to touch, because nobody else does this. And nobody else offers clear value like, you've offered. So I hope this has been helpful. If there's one concept that you can take away from this session, is that no matter what type of consulting you do, there's always a way to tie your deliverables or your services with business outcomes, whether they're short-term outcomes or long-term outcomes. You figure out based on your business and think about, what outcomes can you provide short-term, what outcomes can you provide long-term. Even if you're, doing consulting in supposedly non-quantifiable areas like leadership or culture or brand strategy, there's always a way to quantify both leading and lagging indicators. So that's what I want to leave you with. In order for you to clarify your value proposition, you got to think about what leading indicators you can help your clients achieve, and the lagging indicators as well. And if you do that, and if you're able to actually help them achieve them, despite how distracted they are, as clients are distracted, they're doing 100 different things. When you're able to get them results, that's when you'll be on a rocket ship in your business, and that's when it'll grow. Because most people are not doing it. Most people simply offer services. You don't want to be known for someone who just comes in and provides information, and does some workshops and provides a big fat report which will never get read, right? That's not the reputation you want to have. You want to have the reputation of someone going into an organization and creating meaningful change that is visible and apparent. All right. And again, these are other, we didn't stop with assumptions, just with commitment and market research. Those are just examples that I expanded on. There are other assumptions as well in terms of your business model, in terms of your product and service development, execution, financial and funding expectations, decision-making and accountability. So we had detailed assumptions and client expectations, and they signed off on it. And it was very clear what was expected of them. So there you have it. That's the gist of the of how you clarify your value and be bold in your business, because you have one shot at this, right? You're creating a business. You may as well be bold and help your clients create meaningful change, not just give them information and a big fat report. So very quickly, for those of you who feel that you would like to work with me, I have an offering for you. This is a 60-minute deep dive. It's called the Map Your $500,000 Consulting Game Plan. It's a 60-minute deep dive where I'll help you map your step-by-step path to a $500,000 consulting business. So there's nothing for sale at the end of this 60-minute session. You'll get full value out of it. I'll help you. I'll help uncover, your current situation in your business, where you want to go, and what it takes for you to bridge that gap from where you are right now and reaching and building a $500,000 consulting business. and it'll help you map it out step by step on what the next steps are. So if you're interested, go to bit.ly/go500k. I'm also going to share this the link in the chat, so those of you who are interested can go and sign up. Also, as I mentioned earlier, you can go and sign up, join the group, Consulting Growth Hub, which is a free group, where you'll get the replay of this session. I know we talked a lot about this in this session. We've talked a lot about leading indicators and lagging indicators. But for those of you who want a replay, go ahead and check out that session. For some reason, I'm not able to share the link in the chat. The link to the Map Your $500,000 Consulting Game Plan is bit.ly/go500. All right, so I'm going to look at the questions. Vineet, good to have you here. The first time I'm seeing you here. John, Jay, Katie, Rob, welcome back. All right, so Vineet says, how do you price your services so it's appropriate for the job and in line with client expectations? So, that's a huge topic, right? Pricing. In fact, for the Consulting Growth Hour series, next month, which is March of 2025, is on pricing. But I'll give you a bit an overview. Now, if you're able to agree on certain outcomes with the client, certain business outcomes, what I like to do is put my money where my mouth is, because if I'm a consultant that's worth his salt, I should be able to get a meaningful outcome. So if I'm able to tie that in with a specific outcome, whether that's revenue or profit or cost reduction, then I would create an offering where part of my fees would be contingent on achieving that outcome. Of course, given the assumptions and the expectations are all taken care of by the client, and that becomes a very compelling value proposition where you price your services based on value. But I also understand that in some professions like IT consulting, it's really hard to price based on value, because if you're building a software product or you're creating something on a particular platform, the scope will keep changing. You'll build a small piece of the product, then you'll present it, and then they'll say, no, we want something else. So your scope it changes. So it's not wrong in those situations to price by the hour as well, or per day, because buyers like to buy that way as well. You go into an IT consulting engagement and you say you were priced by value, you'll just be shown the door in most cases if there's no trust with that buyer, if it's a new buyer, because there'll be other people competing as well. So I like to price how the buyers like to buy, but I like to also talk very clearly about the value that I would bring in, because then you could simply you'll have the chance to increase your hourly fee, which is not bad as well, right? Even though it's an hourly fee, it could be time and materials as well, but it's higher because your buyers understand your value a lot more. So I know that that's not the it's not the kind of answer that you may have been looking for, but pricing is a big topic. Again, there's lots of content on pricing in the group, so go ahead and join that. All right, so any more questions? So Rob says the outcomes-based messaging is great. I'm curious about how to handle the scenarios where after getting started and the engagement process progresses deeper, it becomes clear that there would not be a viable business case to be made to support the outcomes. Do you have examples of that, and how did you handle that? Yes, so then if there's no viable business case, then you simply renegotiate, right? If there's no viable business case in the middle of that engagement, then okay, you rescope the engagement and say, okay, now here's what we'll do, here's the outcome that we'll go for, and here's how we scope it. So when there's a lot of trust between you and the buyer, you will be able to have a trust-based conversation, again, based on value, and redirect the scope and recreate the scope. And that happens. It happens, like I just mentioned, it happens in IT, right? But it happened with me as well. And it still happens today. It's not just a thing of the past. You always, sometimes, things change. Priorities, change during the course of a business. And if you're having a long-term engagement with a client, with like a 12-month engagement, priorities can change, but you've got to have an open conversation and rescope it out. All right, folks, thank you so much. This has been very enjoyable presenting this to you. I hope you got some value out of it. Even though it was technical and stuff, I hope you got some value out of it. Let me know if you have any questions. If you haven't connected with me on LinkedIn, just find me on LinkedIn and connect, or you can send me an email with a question. Thanks again for joining, and I'll see you at the next session.